The sun has left and forgotten me. It's dark, I cannot
Your stories don't
see.
define you. How you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief storymaker at Elkins Consulting. I'm standing on the balcony of a high-rise in San Diego, California right now, recording this introduction to a conversation I had with two very dear friends, Kimberly Davis and Heather Younger. We realized that our conversation about our relationships with women and how they've changed us over the years might be a really good conversation for somebody else to overhear. So we recorded it. I hope you enjoy listening to us, laughing, enjoying our conversation together. And I hope that this will be your opportunity to have a conversation with the women in your life. Find out how you can support each other and make sure you are the people that other women can count on. Enjoy. Here's my first question. When you think about a woman who's prized you with her support.
With her support?
Support. A woman who supported you or championed you that you maybe didn't anticipate. And my first story that comes to mind is the one that I told you that you used in your book, which was a woman who was a boss. She took over when I was at the university system. And when she first started to understand the project I was working on, she told my boss that he needed to rein me in because I was working above what I was being paid to do. And he told me that she had done this, that she had said this. And in the context of, he said, don't stop what you're doing. This project needs what you're doing, so don't worry about it.
So this woman said to rein you in?
Yes.
That
so
doesn't feel like support to me.
No. But here's what happened was, over the course of a few months, she started to see what was happening and why I was doing what I was doing. And I had had really a traumatic experience at my previous job. So there I was sitting at my desk, and this woman who was an associate chancellor, no, what was her title? Deputy chief of education, deputy commissioner. And she invited me into her office, and I had an immediate anxiety attack. Like, oh my gosh. She said, I need to see you in my office, just like that. And I'm flushing. I can feel my heart rate going up. I think I'm about to be either fired or reprimanded, because that's what I had experienced in my previous job in significant ways. So I go into her office, she closed the door, and I sat at the chair across from her desk, and she said, I have to give you this, and it's a piece of paper. And I'm reading it, expecting it to be, like a pink slip, and it ended up being a bonus, a change in title, and a raise. Because of the work I had been doing. And she said, as I'm reading this, I'm rereading and rereading. And as I'm reading this, I'm like in disbelief. And she said, what you're doing is making this project work. And without you, I don't think it would have gotten this far. And thank you for all of your hard work on this project. And I was so ready for awful experience. I didn't know how to react to it. But I remember walking out, and I sat down at my desk, and tears dribbled, and I'm not a crier. And from that point forward, she was a champion for me. So I think about how women behave toward each other a lot. And my recent experience with an Airbnb guest that was awful to me. And she had never met me. And I would like to hear more stories about when women championed us.
It's so interesting to me because my experience is similar, and I think that this is an interesting thing to explore around women's relationships. I find women to be so hard on one another on the front end. And I think that was similar with this woman too, right? This story where she's like, you need to rein her in. I mean, what is that?
Am I a
Hello, that is not sisterhood in my head.
No.
And yet on the other side, once you have earned respect or there's something that shifts where they can go,
right.
Well, now I'm going to be your champion. But I think there's a real problem with women and our instincts are to almost be competitive, to push one another down, instead of how do we lift one another up from the outset. Because I've had similar experiences, and I think it's unfortunate that you have to go through, like, you have to almost prove yourself in some way to get that support. Now, of course, I didn't experience that with y'all.
Well, that's
but I've experienced that many times in my career, mostly in a professional sense, not in a friendship sense, but in a professional sense. I think that happens far too often.
I'm trying to, Sarah, my brain is being stretched right now to think of a woman that's not like an immediate friend, who surprised me by their support.
Well, what if?
Well, it's also how do you experience, what does support mean? Because support can show up in so many different ways, right? So with that woman, support showed up as if there was a financial advocacy. I see you, I recognize your achievement, and I want you to know I see you. There's that kind of support. There's the kind of emotional support, which is a different kind of support, right? There's all the different kinds of support. But when you started sharing your story, what showed up for me, because normally when I think of support, I don't think of it in the same way that story unfolded. But what showed up for me as a woman early in my career, when I was doing work through a corp comm department, and I was doing all of the events for a company, and this woman comes in, and she was hired as the new VP of corporate communications and marketing, both. And she came in, and she was really impressed with my work, and she beckoned me into her office after a few days of seeing my work, and she asked about my background, and I tell her about my background, and she goes, "Oh, well, I thought it was going to be different." And then she turns and just like dismisses me. Like literally turned her body away from me, just like to leave the room.
Because she was anticipating, I went to Harvard and I'm an attorney.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, and I'd clearly been doing good work.
Right.
Right? That's the thing. She's like, I was thinking of adding you to the team, but no. And I was
my
like,
gosh.
what? And so I then went, wait a second, let me tell you about how my lived experience has made a difference in the way the value I bring to the conversation. And, I think nobody ever talks to her that way. So she didn't really know what to do with that. But a month later, she came in and brought me a project that essentially changed the trajectory of my career. And she said, "I think you're right for this project, and can you build out this global customer experience program and facilitate it all over the world?" And okay. But it was never, "I see you, you're great." It was always like, "What can you do for me?" Well, and then she had to sit in it for a bit. But had we not had that exchange, that opportunity would have never shown up.
Right.
But it didn't feel like support. Right.
Right.
So that's, I think professionally, women can be really hard on one another.
Yeah. Which is ridiculous, I think. But and as much as I love the friendship support, I think it's even more critical that we support each other in the workplace.
Well, I think what's happened for me since that time now is there is no delineation. Because I've worked for myself, so it's a little bit different, right? If I worked for an organization, it would be a very different story. But now I blur those lines so much. I don't really do business with people I don't care about because I put too much of myself into it. So,
So Heather, when you think about your work and your team,
really hot, sweet pie.
Like the women that you have hired and nurtured in their careers just in the past few years, what is that relationship like from the other perspective? Because I know that they love working with you and for you.
I think it's just the folks that I hire, I'm not hiring them because they're women. There's a strength about them. There's an independence about them I can just tell they're going to be somebody who gets stuff done. And when I, like, for example, with Ashley, she's young, she's like 26. I absolutely love her, but she will challenge me at every turn, and that's exactly why she's still with me. Like, I love the fact that she's just like, that's no, like, no.
Don't do this. Right. That's not going to work.
Whatever it is.
Right.
And so I absolutely love that. I just like people who just look. And so I found that the strong women, I'm attracted to having them around me, and we can like have all these great ideation. And then obviously in the end, it's like I can say, I don't like it, but I let them overrule me a lot. So I think the reason why I like it is just I know they're intelligent. I can trust them. They know things I don't know.
They make us better.
Yeah, they just know things I don't know. And so I'm like, I'd rather have people around me because I know there's so much I don't know, and if I can get people around me who know all these things and can do all these things that I'm horrible at, so that strength stuff, I definitely am a strengths-based leader. There's no doubt about that.
But don't you think so? I think that there's a difference between really appreciating strong women, which I really appreciate, and women who are projecting strength when it's actually they're jealous or they're intimidated, and so they're trying to prove, like they're trying to squash.
Well, women
strength.
say they love strong women, but they don't necessarily want to work with them.
Yeah,
I don't want a strong woman who is like what you just said.
Yeah,
100%. Like there's an insecurity there, so they're going to make you know that they're this, they're that, and that makes you feel lesser than or something.
But how do we be strong together? I mean, that to me is like that's.
Well, Heather is building an empire around that, being strong together.
Yeah.
Trying to. Well, even I'm thinking about NSA, so National Speaker Association. You remember and you weren't. Okay, so there's like I see they have these little mastermind hubs, like different people that join things. Some of them are all women, some of them aren't. They're mixed, different things. And so I don't know if you saw my post just the other day about. So I get bumped, and my friend who lives in Colombia, she's a speaker. She speaks on resilience and stuff like that. So I have dinner with her the night before I'm going to start all this stuff, and I think that's the last time I'm going to see her. And then I get to the airport and it's time to leave, and I don't get to leave. And she and I'm texting her going, oh yeah. She goes, well, just let me know, and I can always pick you up. I'm like 10 minutes from the airport. So I didn't think I was going to have to do that. We go on the runway. I'm thinking we're about to come off. Nope, got to turn back around, refuel. Nope, they're not going to let us leave to Dallas.
Oh,
we have to go Dallas to Denver. And so it just doesn't happen. So I finally go, I'm not going to sit around. I am too exhausted. I just need a bed to sleep in. I'm not going to sit around this anymore. So I call her. I'm like, listen, I'm going to Uber to you. I'm not going to have you all leaving right now. It's too late. I'm just going to Uber to you and just thank you so much. And can you do anything for me? I'm like, nope. I just need your bed. Like, I just need
to sleep.
And then I'll get up and, leave the next day. But her, like, she's that kind of person. She's a very strong person, and she has a mastermind group that's a couple other women, and then she's got another one that has women, like a couple of women and then a man in it. And I noticed like they do the connection, and there's even referrals between people. So if someone booked you this year, if you have a good relationship with them, if you're in a mastermind or whatever, then they'll refer you to that same group of people because they're not going to usually bring you back the second year.
Right.
And so I see a lot of support take place inside of that. I mean, I haven't had a ton of referrals, but part of it is because I am very much a loner and I have like my own little mini group of people that are not speakers, that are there to do the thing. And so, but I'm trying to do a little bit more of it, to try to have a little bit more of that support system. It's hard because I'm the only child. So for me, I'm this kind of person.
Right.
Yeah. So it's hard to.
I actually do. I have a standard thank you email that I write. I normally will handwrite a thank you note to the person who hired me or to the team that hosted me at an event like the Servant Leadership Conference I spoke at in Dallas early this year. But what I've started doing in my standard email thanking them is sending them a list of speakers, particularly women, who are relatively undiscovered. So I'll send Caroline Brookfield, who talks on creativity. I'll send Shelley Brown, who talks about belonging, and Wendy. I don't know why I'm struggling. No. But she wrote this great book, and I saw her speak at the Servant Leadership Conference, and she's fantastic. So I will send a list of 3.
That's a great idea.
And generally it's women. Every once in a while, like I'll put an Andy Vargo in there because I think his voice needs to be heard. So why are we not doing more of that?
Oh, in terms of referral?
I think there's more pockets of it.
I think it's happening in less
intentionally.
I don't know, less intentionally. I think it's just less structured ways. Because I know I'm referring people all the time, but it's not you've got a wonderful system for it. Yeah. But I'm also.
I need to refer people more.
I'm in a different place with my career too.
Yeah, I think I I enjoy it. But I know we're working on more of the certification programs and looking at licensing and things like that, things that will let other people use my stuff.
Yes.
So I'll be like the creative and the team will help put it together, and then we just put systems in place and sell the systems and do the certifications and the assessments and all the books. You know what I mean?
So are you seeing a difference? I mean, you're putting all this stuff out there about listening and caring, and are you seeing a difference in workplaces? Are people actually applying this stuff?
I think more organizations, it's so funny when you think about the thing in the past. Culture used to be this like, what is that thing? And now everybody's talking about it, and a lot of companies are doing work on it. You know this. So the problem is there's just a lot of jerks out there. And so, and there's a lot of people who have good intentions, but they don't want to stay at it long term, change transformation stuff. It's just, it's a lifetime of work. The client,
is a lifetime,
right?
Isn't it? And I find myself, I go like, yes, I can make an impact. Crap, this didn't matter, Jack. Yes, I can make an impact. And the problem is when you teach authentic leadership, right? And I talk about all this, we're all have similar conversations.
Yeah.
But and then the leadership you see in the world is not reflective of most of the stuff I'm talking about. It's really disheartening. It's really disheartening. And I know that it works, and I know that it's important. And there are times when I'm like, yes, this is a worthy fight. And sometimes I do feel so sad and fatigued by like Sisyphus pushing the ball uphill all the time. That I have to stop and refuel, because I can't keep. I'm not able to keep an even level of, yes, this is the fight I'm fighting, because the fight I'm fighting sometimes feels like a fruitless.
I don't know if anyone can, though. I mean, I think more people would benefit by taking that break, like prop up that ball for a little while, walk away, and then come back and keep pushing. Because I think about that a lot, because I told you last week I was so discouraged by meanness. And by the people that I love that are sharing hateful, antagonistic stuff, and they don't even think about it as being hateful. But when you see the reactions to it, it doesn't matter what your intention is in sharing it.
Right.
Because if it's making people feel angry or distrustful, which that's what most of it does, I found myself really discouraged. But the more I come back to it, when I take that break and I talk to my son who has this wisdom about him, then I feel like I can come back. And especially because I have my girlfriends. I have you two, Heather and Kimberly, and I have Melissa, and I have friends at home, and my sister is amazing. And that's where I think when we take our breaks, if we are really intentional about who we take them with, I have a lot of solitary time that I find really refreshing.
That's huge for me.
But sometimes it ends up being that internal dialogue that is negative if I'm not careful. So, I mean, I think girlfriends they make all the difference.
I have hope. I have hope. I always have hope. It's the thing that gets me up. I do believe that the work either I do or the work that's done through me, like again, the people who get certified, I do feel like there's the one person, and my thing is like, if there's one person that changes one behavior in an audience of hundreds of people, I don't really care. In my mind, the impact's there, it's worth it. So to me, like the things that I do and it being worth it to me is, I always think it's worth it.
I always think the work is worth it.
Just one person.
And at the same time, I feel sometimes that I'm so fatigued by everything I see that it's not that I don't feel like it's worth it. I feel overwhelmed.
And are we moving the needle? That's the question.
Overwhelmed by the problem. And I think for me also, and this is, I'm in a different place again than I used to be. I'm looking at how can I have my whole life be a way to experience the impact that I want to make as a human being, not just my work.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking at life in a much more holistic way than I ever did before.
Yeah, and you're inspiring people like me. You're inspiring people by the way
Well,
you're doing that.
because here's the thing. It's like at the end of my life, I don't want to go, I wish I would have.
Yeah.
And if I can look at, okay, this is the impact I want to have, this is what I stand for, and how do I do that in every facet of my life, not just in my work? It feels more whole. I feel more whole.
I don't know. I have this congruency is super important to me. I just I want to be like the thing I say. I value my presence with you, and I want to value that presence. If it's my kids sitting at the kitchen table, I want to value my presence with my husband. So, and of course, I struggle with that. This is not, we all, right?
Welcome to being human.
So I'm always trying to go, and I'll tell people, in the audience, I'm like, listen, this is what happens. My boys come in. It used to be they'd come in and they all started yapping to me, and I'd get so frustrated. And I finally had to have my workaround so that I didn't feel guilty that I wasn't being present for them. So I would say, okay, Dominic and Mateo, you have to shush. So Sebastian, tell me about blah, blah, blah. Then I'm right here, and I can sense that at least I can pause with my conversation with him and come back to him later. I'll be in your room later. We'll talk about it.
Right.
Boom. Now tell me this.
I don't know how you do
Well, I had to do it because they would all come in from school and be like, and I still was working, and I'd be like Calgon, take me away kind of thing. And it was because I was allowing it to flow in, because I do have that whole empath thing happening. It just flows, which is why the exhaustion is even more real for me.
That's exactly
It's really real for me. So I have to be super intentional about what's the thing that settles me, that centers me, that's all that level, what do I do for me and how often do I do it? But the boys will come in and it's just flowing. And I got to the point where I'm like, I am being a hypocrite. I talk about listening and I cannot hear them. I cannot hear, I can't do it, not all at one time. So I just started to have these little workarounds, and I try to share those workarounds with people. This might be happening to you at work. By the way, if somebody comes up to you and they want you to listen to them, you don't have to do it in that moment. Here's what you say. And I'm trying to give them the words to say how do you not have to respond, Oh my gosh, just because I've been there, done that.
Right. And if we can do it with our kids, we can do it with other people.
Exactly.
Yeah. I did the same thing when our older son Jacob was in high school. It was his second semester of his senior year. He was failing all of his classes. He was overwhelmed. It was second semester of his junior year. Oh. And he was just struggling. And he came into the dining room where I was working with my laptop open, and he walks in, Mom, I need blah, 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 blah. And I said, whoa, Jacob, give me a second. I need to finish this email, because my brain is not going to finish this email if I can't do it right now. And I said, just give me a second. So I finished what I was doing. I closed my laptop, turned my phone upside down, facing down, so I couldn't see it. And I looked him straight in the eyes. I said, okay, tell me what's going on. And whatever. It was a half a minute conversation, which is normal for a 17-year-old, right? And I said, okay, are we good? And he said, yeah. And he walked away. And then a couple days later, same thing. Mom, I need blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wait. So I closed my laptop, turned my phone upside down. I said, okay, Jacob, what do you need from me? And he sat down in the chair and faced me.
Wow.
And he said, this is blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. And I answered him whatever it was. I said, is that it? Is there something else? And he's like, no, that's it. And I said, okay, thanks for telling me. And I went to open my laptop, and he stood up to walk away, and he stopped, and he turned around and he looked at me and he said, thanks, Mom. That was like a full 3-minute conversation. Yeah. And with a 17-year-old boy, that's big, right? Exactly. A 3-minute full sentence conversation. Yeah. Really and what I realized at the time was that what I was doing by turning my phone upside down was giving myself that cue that I needed to be fully present. Yeah. What I didn't know was that I was giving him the cue.
That's right.
Mom's paying attention.
She really cares.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's literally, I'm spending a majority of my time exactly what you're talking about with these audiences. And I think it's clicking. I think they're realizing the impact of that need to be present, and all the humanity that's embedded in it, and also the gift that's given by us doing that. I mean,
right?
It's massive. It's really massive.
When your kid says thank you just for paying attention to them, it's such a contradiction for me. Because it's like, whoa, he shouldn't have to thank me for paying attention to him.
But the thing is that it's so rare in this world for someone to give us 3 minutes of undivided attention that it differentiates.
And again, it's sad. And yet I'm so grateful.
I disagree with you. Sarah, because don't you think we should be saying thank you all the time for everything that's wonderful? I mean, I think saying thank you is like, that was really, it was his cue of saying that was really special.
Yeah.
Right.
Not that this is unusual. He wasn't saying, Mom, you don't normally do this. That was
And
really great.
like part of it was that contradiction for me. It was, oh, that's so sweet that he gets it, that this was a gift. And at the same time, like, well, my kid should know I'm going to pay attention to him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it's really great that
I think he did it. That was a gift to you.
Yeah,
That's so awesome.
I think that he was giving you a gift back, is what
That's
it was.
awesome.
I don't know. I don't think it was a cue that was unusual. I think it was a cue that I want you to know I really appreciated that. That was really meaningful.
I had a woman come up to me during that 3-day workshop part, which is where this is the meaningful part of things. There was a few people all over the 2 days that came up to me. One lady came up to me and said she was in foster care and then like basically was on her own since she was 13, and my story of belonging, just like some of the things that like it's something that she had an affinity to. It's mostly the story. It's the story, and I tell people that. Yeah, and I told this particular company, I had 5,000 employees, and I said, do you all do much storytelling around the times when belonging is working at work? So when it's working at work, and if people are brave enough to talk about when it didn't work at work, and I tell them about this podcast I did where there was a woman who shared that she was the aggressor in a microaggression. She was the assistant county manager at one place, and they were at this executive retreat, and there was an African American guy that's kind of a part of the executive team, but she's kind of above him, so a little bit superior to him, let's say. And they were getting people at the table like, we need to have a diverse voice, and she looks over and she goes, "Come over here, Jared. We need a totally black person." And she says this in front of yeah. So she says this, okay, and then he ends up coming up to her going, I thought we had a trusting relationship. I thought this was really hurtful, blah, blah, blah. Well, what they ended up doing.
He felt safe enough to say that to her.
He did. He did. Well, because he is on the executive team, so he's not like so.
Well, and that speaks volumes about both of them.
It does. And so here's what's even more beautiful, which I didn't expect this. It was a podcast, that when you invite people, you don't know what they're going to tell you. You're like, they're just leaders of the heart or whatever, right? I don't know. So what happened is these two decided to go around, and now they're going around the whole county sharing the story of this microaggression and how they were able to come together. It gives you chills, doesn't it? So I was like, that's the kind of stuff. So I'm able to share all these like real life things of it. But the people, when they come through with it, it's like I didn't know about this thing. And then one lady, when I did that listening session with the marginalized group, Latino woman, she said in the group, she said, I went back right away. Like all these people are already starting to take action, and people are calling us already after your talk, and this and that. She goes, but one person told me that she didn't feel like she belonged as she was sitting there listening to you. And I said, oh, and so she said, and I told the lady, like, that's good. Hold on to that sense of not belonging, even if it's in front of Heather. Like hold on to the sense of it, whatever that is, whatever that
because then you
was.
Can sense it in other people.
Yeah, because that's what I told them. I'm like, I want you to think of it like, how many here have been in a place where you don't feel like you belong? And it's like 90% of the room, white guys, white ladies, doesn't matter. They're all doing it, right? And so they do that, and I go, and that's what I want you to hold on to right now. I want you to ensure that nobody ever feels the way you felt like that. And so that's how we start off.
That's
right.
And they're just like, okay, and now let's get into like how you do this, Yeah.
So,
that's so good.
In my podcast, I start with, tell me something that most people don't know about you. And I have to tell you, I've done over 300 episodes and probably 280 interviews or something like that, because some of the episodes are monologues.
They're solo, yeah.
But what's interesting is how many people in not only in my podcast, but in my coaching and the friends that I've talked to over decades of conversation have said, I never felt like I really fit in.
Yep.
Almost every single person I know has said something like that.
Oh my gosh.
I never really felt like I fit in.
That's the next book, by the way.
The only person only person that didn't say that was a young man I interviewed. He was in his 20s, and he said, I was the one that always fit in, and I desperately wanted to get out.
Oh my gosh, that's totally the next book. That is the beginning story of your next book.
Calling it fitting in?
Oh, that just gave me chills. Seriously, because when you see the trend like that, you're like, because we're doing research. That's what's happening in our podcast.
Right. Yeah.
So when you see that trend, that's what happened with the Caring Leadership book. I was like, what? And then it just popped to me.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's powerful.
Yeah. Right. So if nobody ever feels like they fit in, where does that leave us?
Right.
Ooh.
Right.
And that's why the session at No Longer Virtual in Park City, Utah was so important. It was belonging and the difference, the distinction between fitting in and belonging.
Oh, wait, but Sarah, please just put this down for yourself. You need to at least write this down, because this is totally your next book, I'm telling you. Because I'm thinking about a couple things. I'm thinking about a couple different angles. I'm thinking about the fact that, like, in a predominantly Christian, like, really a lot, then you as a Jewish person, so you have some storytelling to tell.
Right.
But that the stories, it still goes back to stories. So it's like fitting in.
Of course it does.
But how our stories, kind of like what I was saying, share your stories. Do storytelling in your organization. You got to share the stories so people can feel empathy through the stories they hear. They'll see, oh, I'm in that role. I've done that. Or I've done well.
Which is how you start your listening sessions.
Yeah.
With have any of you felt like you don't belong?
Exactly.
Right.
Like, or in the keynote. Yeah, all of it. I'm always trying to go, like, where is your pain? And then, like, where is the pleasure? Or, like, where are your positive memories? And then where are your negative ones? And then I want them to connect with both, so they can figure out, like, how do they create more of the good and how do they get rid of the bad, right? But I mean, in this case, you're seeing a trend. There's so many different angles I can see, fully all the great stories and angles you could take inside of that. Oh my gosh. Fully in your world.
I already started it.
Oh, did you? Yay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
In the context of authenticity.
I can see it totally. So
interesting.
Good. So good.
That's
So good.
the time. You must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.